the cloud. Alrighty, you guys are gonna do great. We're gonna open the room in just a second here. Should have refilled my coffee. Alrighty, guys. Good luck here. If I can get this, here we go. Awesome. Welcome in, everybody. I'm just going to give everyone about a minute and a half to come into the room, settle your video and audio preferences. We're so excited to have you guys here on behalf of ACRO, Bentley University, as well as George Washington University. So we will just give it a second and then we'll get started. You know, Mike said something, I think last webinar, and he was like, we should really have some entrance music, kind of like elevator music to get the mood going. I'm gonna do that for this next webinar, I think. Welcome in everybody. Alrighty, we got a good number of people in the room. Again, on behalf of ACRO, as well as GW and Bentley University, welcome in, guys. We're so excited to be talking about leadership versus management, would you rather? For those of you guys who have not joined us before for a webinar, ACRO does use Zoom webinar, which means that by default, your cameras and audio are gonna be off just to make sure that our panelists aren't interrupted. But I know that there will be an interactive portion of this webinar where you'll have the opportunity to interact in the chat, or also by turning on your cameras or turning on your videos and audio preferences, excuse me, as well. With the chat feature on the bottom, we have two settings, meaning that you can message everybody by selecting everyone, or you can just message the host and panelists if you have a question or a tech problem that might come up during the session. We also have our Q&A session, or our Q&A, excuse me, section as well, where you can be asking questions and you can view questions that other people have asked and uptick them, like them. There's not a dislike button, so that's good, but definitely another way that you can engage. And I know that Katie and Amy will be taking questions throughout, as well as towards the end. So without further ado, I want to introduce Amy and pass the mic over. Guys, thank you so much for being here. We're excited to have you.
Hi, I'm so excited to see you all here today. We presented this session at the ACRO conference in Portland, and are excited to kind of share this with a larger audience, and maybe some of you who weren't able to make it to Portland this year. To give you a little introduction, this is leadership versus management. Would you rather? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I am Amy Latermi. I'm the University Registrar at Bentley University. Bentley is a business-focused school right outside of Boston in Waltham, Massachusetts. We have about a total enrollment of 5,000. 1,000 of those are graduate students and about 4,000 undergraduate students. Prior to working at Bentley, I was at Florida State University for almost 15 years, started in athletics eligibility certification and kind of worked my way up and probably wore all the different registrar hats you can wear during my time there. I started here in March, so just over 2 months ago. I think it was March 23rd. I've kind of been a crash course doing a bit of a transition from large public school to a smaller private school, but I'm excited to take these skill sets that I've learned, not just in the registrar world, but leadership and management, and apply them in a different environment. So that's a little bit about me. Katie.
Yeah, and hi everybody. My name is Katie Cloud. I am the Deputy Registrar at the George Washington University here in Washington, D.C., just blocks from the White House. I previously, before coming here, spent a little over 11, 12 years at Florida State University, which now explains to all of you how Amy and I got together to do this presentation. At Florida State, I had been there since an undergraduate student, continued on, stayed there because I enjoyed it so much and really found that love for higher education. I started out working in the one of the departments doing a lot of their course scheduling, and then moved on to an academic dean's office as an advisor with an advising roster of about 3,000 students. And I also worked as an academic mapping coordinator, which is kind of a specialized program that Florida State has to help keep students on track towards graduation. Then I moved over to athletic eligibility at Florida State, which is where I really got to know Amy. And she was actually my direct supervisor for about 8 years. And we became great friends too, and colleagues. And I just 1 year ago today moved up here to Washington, D.C. To the George Washington University. So I'm very excited to be here. When I was at Florida State, I also did transcripts, graduation, and current records. So got a wide variety of experiences there. But let's talk a little bit more about management and leadership. Enough about us specifically. So 3 kind of concepts that we're going to go through today. We're going to explore the differences between effective leadership and strong management. We're going to discuss how those 2 things can coexist and be beneficial for an organization. It's not really for us one or the other, it's both of them together. And then we're also going to examine qualities that staff want most in a supervisor and determine if current supervisors are meeting those expectations.
So in 2018, the Office of Financial Aid became part of Enrollment Management Unit, and enrollment management prior to that was admissions in the registrar's office. And so the Financial Aid Office had previously had a different director and a different reporting line within the university. And so this change, while it made it kind of in line with a lot of enrollment management to the, the way the enrollment management field has grown, right? So a lot of schools, it's admissions, registrar, and financial aid. So Florida State was taking the step to kind of create that model. But it really, on our campus, was quite a challenge because it was merging 2 office cultures that had different hiring practices and management styles. And the kind of first year to a year and a half was a reorganization of the Office of Financial Aid to better match kind of the structure of the registrar's office and the admissions office. And the challenges during that time were low morale. A lot of staff in financial aid didn't know what their future held, and a high number of vacancies due to attrition, so people left, and retirements. But the associate vice president who was kind of leading this organization really saw this as an opportunity for growth, not just in financial aid, but it was an opportunity in all 3 units to really kind of examine how we structure an office or a unit that has 3 offices to where they can complement each other. So I had the opportunity, you want to go to the next slide, Katie? I had the opportunity to sit down with all of the supervisors in the financial aid office to really think about, how did they view supervising and management and leadership and kind of these concepts. So John Barnhill, who is the associate vice president at Florida State, and I met individually with each financial aid supervisor. And this was really kind of not a registrar. This was more of a professional development opportunity for me because he knew that I had an interest in the area. So we met one-on-one for about 45 minutes to an hour and kind of went through these 3 questions. It was very open-ended. It was a safe space, right? So it wasn't meant to be finger pointing, but it was an opportunity for people to share their thoughts on how they've been managed, how they think they should be managed, how they manage. And so these, like I said, were 3 questions. What are the qualities of a good supervisor? Good, that's obviously, a subjective term. How do you exhibit these qualities with your direct reports? And then how might you improve? And then finally, how do you like to be supervised? So I want to take a couple of minutes and have each of you maybe jot some things down on how you would answer these 3 questions. We'll give you probably, I guess, about Let's say maybe 3 to 5 minutes. 3 minutes should be enough, actually. 3 minutes, just jot down on a piece of paper or notepad on your computer, what these questions, how you would answer them. Now we need the music.
I was thinking that too.
A little Jeopardy theme song or something.
What music are we thinking, guys?
Yeah.
My Spotify.
So it's been about 2 minutes. We'll give you guys 1 more minute and then we'll continue on.
All right, so if you want to move to the next slide, obviously, those of you who might still be pondering these questions can still jot things down. That's the nice thing about a webinar. We can't see you. But want to talk to you a little bit about management and kind of the way we're defining management for this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot of information out there. And I have seen where sometimes management is that term is treated like being a boss and things like that. And I don't define it that way. And so I have a couple of kind of different quotes and definitions here about, management is the coordination and the administration of tasks to achieve a goal. It's a judicious use of means. And think about that in what we do in higher ed, right? Judicious use of means to accomplish an end. I think that if you want to talk about like being a registrar, I think that right there is a good definition. Good management consists of showing average people how to do the work of superior people. The way management treats associates is exactly how associates will treat customers. And the synonyms are charge, direction, and oversight. And I wanted to also share a quote with you that I've recently come across. It's by Peter Drucker, who has a theory of management. He's the one who has coined like SMART goals when you think about defining goals and having them, the acronym SMART. But management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. And I think that that's a really good way to think about these two concepts, and that they are similar, but they are not the same. So the next slide will show us kind of the focus and the skill set of managers. They focus on planning, organizing, resource usage, coordinating and time management, right? These are the kind of day-to-day responsibilities to manage an organization or an office or a staff. Their skills, they resolve problems. They're effective communicators. They take control. they can execute a plan, they minimize risk, they are process driven, and they embrace stability, right? They are looking for ways to keep, minimize risk and embracing stability. Those are kind of the same concept, right? A lot of times I think those are the things that sometimes get challenged as a negative skill set. But I believe, when we think about currently, and COVID is a perfect example, right? Embracing stability and finding stability were really important skills kind of during that upheaval of kind of the world as we know it and higher ed as we do it and how things worked. So I will hand it over to Katie, who will talk a little bit about leadership.
All right, so the other half of our presentation today is about leadership. And what is leadership and how do we define it for this webinar? So leadership is a skill used in every organization at every level. That's really the thing that we tried to focus on, right? Managers don't have to be leaders, leaders don't have to be managers. But it's helping to move the organization as a whole, your registrar's office or your institution as a whole forward and to that next level. It's working with people to provide direction or guidance. It's having the capacity to translate vision into reality. It's that idea person who can really help get your organization an institution to that next level. The middle quote here was one that I really liked. It's, a leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim is fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. Those leaders really work to all together make sure that it's not just about you, it's about the organization as a whole, get us all to that next level, get that idea or goal accomplished. Synonyms that were influence, initiative, guidance. Leadership is really about that motivation and working directly with people. So focus of leaders and strong leaders are providing those vision, goal setting, motivation, listening, mentoring, coaching, teaching. A lot of this isn't really about being the boss. It's about being somebody within an office or within an organization that can help that teamwork, relationship building. They look for opportunities, not problems. A lot of what we see in Reed says that managers are here to fix problems, but leaders are here to seek out those opportunities, those next kind of goals, ways to get you to that next level. Skills, they can be persuasive, accountable. They really look inside and how can we hold ourselves and our organization accountable for things. Challenges the norm, right? It's not just about we're doing it because that's how we've always done it. It's, well, how can we improve? How can we together make it better? Being proactive, so not as much reactive. Embracing change, creates, be innovative, and takes risks. So just like Amy was talking about with COVID and needing good managers for that stability piece, we also need good leaders. We need leaders to look at this new environment that we're all in and that we've all been kind of thrown into unknowingly that we're going this direction and really take it to that next level. How can we not just in this new environment maintain what we've been doing, but how can we make it better? All right, so management versus leadership. We've talked a lot about management, a lot about leadership so far. Our kind of vision in this is that the two are not mutually exclusive, right? Administrators need to have both skills. I think that Amy and I have talked about it quite a bit. We both feel that people tend to lean one way or the other, but you really need to have both skills. In comparing notes, getting ready for this webinar and our ACRO presentation at the beginning of April, we thought back to people that we worked with at Florida State University. And we could identify, interestingly enough, we picked the same people that in our previous offices were good managers, and those were good leaders. In kind of the things that we saw in each of them that made them that good manager or good leader. You often need to manage and lead people outside of your organization, right? It's not just about managing and leading within, it's which is a whole probably different presentation, but managing and leading out and managing and leading up. Like I said, you might be a natural leader, natural manager, or both.
We're going to talk through a couple of scenarios here. And, I think that these are probably relatable. These are not necessarily our experiences per se, but they're kind of we've taken a lot of our own experiences at different institutions, or we've shared with each other and kind of created these scenarios. In the last 6 months, you have had 2 staff members take new jobs. A third has verbally accepted a job offer in another field, and you believe 2 others are actively looking. Your human resources department has alerted you to a backlog in their office, indicating that the hiring process is slower than usual. The applicant pools are not as robust as you would hope. Your institution's salaries are typically below market value. I'm sure none of you deal with this, but below market value and of your peer institutions. And the timing is terrible, right? It's either the beginning of the term, the end of the term, summer. So in this scenario, the Great Resignation, right? We're hearing about this. It's been going on for a lot of years, maybe a little, I think actually beginning of 2021. Can you go to the next?
Yep.
Slide? So in this, what does a manager do and what does a leader do in this kind of crafted scenario? The manager determines where the gaps are, right? So you've had a person leave, and now you don't have anyone who can handle transcripts, right? So it's determining where the gaps of knowledge are in your office and determining kind of how you kind of move people around. You work to optimize the HR process. So make sure that those things are not stopping in your office. And so I say things like, if you have to go in and approve or craft, be the one to actually write the position description that needs to be posted, or you need to approve it, make sure you're on top of those things so that you're not holding up the process. Prioritize tasks based on importance, right? We know when we always have more work than we have people to do. It's even worse when you're down positions, right? And you have open positions in your office. So then you have to really sit down and go, what's important? So right now it's posting degrees, getting diplomas out, making sure summer enrollment is where it needs to be, that we're doing all the things we need to do for that. We also currently are, starting audit season, right? So what do I need to get the auditor? So it's identifying what are the must-haves right now, and then what are the things that aren't as important at this point in time. Reassign duties to ensure proper coverage. So the example I gave earlier is transcripts. Well, maybe your backup person needs to move to being primary on transcripts, and then the backup person for maybe enrollment verifications or registration, moves into that role, until you can get fully staffed. The good news is this offers opportunity for a breadth of knowledge, right? Staff becomes more knowledgeable. And then a manager works nights and weekends to ensure deadlines are met, right? They're deadline driven. They focus on what needs to get done and when it needs to get done by, and they get those things done. Now let's shift our, kind of thinking to what does a leader do? A leader conducts exit interviews with staff, right? They need to figure out what are the reasons why staff are leaving and what are the things that might make them stay. Now, it could be that the person leaving for another field, I just finished my master's in psychology. I want to be a counselor. Obviously, there's nothing I can do to keep that person here. But if you find that other staff are getting maybe a 9% pay bump, well, maybe you can go to HR and say, listen, it's going to be a lot cheaper for us to keep this person for 10% pay raise than it is for me to keep, have overtime from people working and bring in, do a whole search, maybe have to pay for someone to move, So it's really trying to figure out what are things we can do to keep people here in these positions longer? Or if you get negative feedback about something, what are things you can do to change the culture of your team to maybe encourage people to stay? Roll up your sleeves and help, right? Leaders are never, it's not that's not my job, right? It's what can I do? What can I do to help? Send me that list. I will go in and check the box on all 67 of those people, right? It's those kind of, it doesn't, just because it's a menial task doesn't mean you're the leader and you don't need to do those things, right? It's the person who's like, I will help no matter what, send it to me. And in doing that, can you identify efficiencies? Like, is there not a mass process where I can just push a button and all 67 of these get checked, right? It's in those moments of helping that you identify ways that you can perhaps change business processes to better support your unit and make you more efficient. And explore a new structure to support staff, right? Provide new opportunities and learning. That's what I was saying earlier, right? About moving people around. Well, maybe you're a leader is strategic in doing that. Well, if I move this person there, then, when this person leaves, I have someone who has knowledge of all these areas, perhaps I can promote that person. So it's like thinking of a succession plan, even in these dire moments of being understaffed. Growth within the organization, same thing. And then work-life balance, right? You have to still consider that the people who are doing the extra work, it's going to have an impact on them, right? And so I think that's where this Great Resignation, a lot of it came from, is people were doing so much extra work during COVID that in part, not obviously there's a lot of factors, but that they, once COVID, once things kind of went back to normal or whatever, new normal, they were tired, they were burnt out, they were done. And so it's considering that and just deciding, what, we just have to stop right here today and go home and spend the weekend with our families and doing what we like to do, and then come back and it'll all be here on Monday. And so I invite you, what do you think? I saw some chats down here about this sounds familiar. So obviously some of you have had to do it. What are your thoughts on how management handle things versus how leaders? And you can raise your hand if you want to make a comment, or you can put it in the chat. That's cool. We'll talk more at the end. All right, Katie.
All right. Oh, I'm gonna make this chat go away. All right. So our second scenario is something that we are probably either currently or recently have experienced. What if you are a staff that has multiple campuses? We have 3. Hybrid and remote staff, some staff in person full-time, right? You've got people in multiple locations, multiple modalities. You bring a new staff member into your team because, we all have experienced this Great Resignation that we've been talking about and are bringing in new staff constantly. At least hopefully we're bringing them in constantly. This new staff member asks about an adjusted schedule and lunch period, right? So maybe they don't want to work that full 8 to 5 with an hour-long lunch. They're thinking, I eat lunch within 15, 20 minutes, and then I'm just kind of sitting around and it seems like a waste of time. They bring this up, you bring it to your management or leadership team. You can have a management team that is separate from a leadership team, or you can have them kind of together as one. But what if not everybody's on board with this idea right away, right? Odds are they're probably not going to be. Somebody will see things differently than you. It doesn't make it wrong, right? Everything is better with conversation. Let's talk about that. Let's see, why are you concerned about it? Why do you think this may not be a great idea? Why do you think it is a great idea? Let's have that conversation. And then how do you think you'd get people on board, right? For me, a lot of it is talking about those concerns, talking about, well, how do we all feel about this? If we think it's okay for this one person, do we then open it up to the rest of the office, right? Do we scale that? And what are the advantages to that? What are the disadvantages to that? So let's talk through kind of that idea, that scenario, and what would a manager versus what would a leader do? Oh, I'm seeing on my other screen, there's some chats coming up. Yep, causing headaches right now. So a manager might look for ways to mitigate potential risks, right? So talking about this, potential concerns about opening up to the whole office. Well, what if, maybe even if it's not right now, maybe down the line, we've got someone working an adjusted schedule and we find out that that hour that they're here by themselves every morning in the office or home, online, working before everybody else, they're not being very productive. Right. Okay. So then let's look at that and find, are there ways that we can, take a look at that possible risk and say, well, how do we avoid that? Right. Is it giving them specific tasks and duties that are to be done that are easily measurable? Right. Is it making sure you get all of your enrollment verifications done that came in overnight, done in that first hour in the morning? Ensuring that there will be adequate coverage in all areas of the office, right? So at GW, we have a one-stop shop where a lot of our phone calls and emails come into, and they field it for our office as well as several other offices on campus. So it's making sure that we have adequate coverage in different areas of our office during those phone hours for our one-stop shop to potentially escalate calls. Right? We don't want to be in a position where a student calls in because their transcript hasn't been delivered to a potential employer and it has to get there by 5 in order for their job offer to be processed. And we have nobody in the office who can help them figure out why it didn't get processed. The work to determine if there's any HR processes that need to be in place or forms that need to be filled out if we choose to go in this direction. And then again, addressing any potential performance issues. So how do you address this with someone who may currently have a performance issue, or if there's performance issues in the future? Right. But then what does a leader do? Right. A leader takes a slightly different approach where they look to make sure that the entire team, regardless of their campus or modality, are being treated equally. Right. They're looking for that equality and equity. Right. So making sure that this option, if we're opening up to the entire team, truly is an option available to the entire team. It's not just one campus, the other. It's not only our people coming into the office, that it could be available for those that might be fully remote too. They help guide supervisors to a decision to make this as an entire management or leadership team, right? We don't ever want as a leader to necessarily be that kind of dictatorship, right? We know that we're going to get people on board and excited about an idea if we all agree on it, or at least get to a place where we can all really see each other's vantage points, okay? And then talk about it as a bigger picture, right? When we started looking at this, we thought, wait a second, is it really just about lunch hours? Or let's think about, why do we work 8 to 5 as an office as a whole, right? Who said our office is 8 to 5? Do we have to be 8 to 5? Could we have other hours? So it's really looking at that big picture. It's take this one little question from one new employee and look at how can we improve for everybody. And a lot of this comes down to that work-life balance and really looking back to that Great Resignation, right? So it's, okay, we've been losing people for a large number of reasons, but one of them oftentimes seems to come back to that work-life balance, right? I think a lot of that comes from, for the past few years, for a lot of us, home has been work and work has been home. So how do we make that better for people? Maybe I can't give you that 10% raise, but you know what? I can let you work 7 to 4 instead of 8 to 5 so that you have, an extra hour with your kids so that you're home and available when they get home from school. You can do daycare pickup or daycare drop off, really working with people to encourage that work-life balance and seeing not just the task at hand, but the people. So anybody out there with ideas on what you would do?
I've had some chats. Someone has kind of confirmed that, the actions taken by a manager and leader are not always mutually exclusive, right? So some of those, you could have obviously the same person playing both those roles. Alternate schedules can be reviewed every semester to allow for flexibility. That's great, especially if you offer, educational benefits, which a lot of us do, offer staff opportunities to take classes. Develop a pilot program and analyze how the new schedules affect the department, other departments, and your customers.
Yep.
That's a really good idea. And then this conversation is an opportunity to expand cross-training within and across teams. It helps to account for peaks and valleys in different areas and allows for added flexibility. Absolutely. I know we had a policy at Florida State that once we went remote or went partially remote, or hybrid is probably the better term, those like the 2 weeks before classes and the first 2 weeks of class, everyone was in person, right? Even if you were hybrid, you needed to be there, right? Because especially with a residential campus, you have students that are going to be coming to your office to take care of their business. And so peaks and valleys are absolutely right. We all have those in our office. It may not, the work doesn't change, but your traffic flow may change. It's great comments.
Yeah,
All right.
they are great comments. So now the real question is, so which is better? Management or leadership? So we'll let you guys just ponder that as we continue through.
All right, so we're going to return to the case study. So again, if any of you joined late, in 2018, I had an opportunity to kind of do a side project within the enrollment management unit at Florida State. And the Office of Financial Aid had become part of the community, the enrollment management unit. And we had, these kind of challenges or perhaps an opportunity, right? An opportunity to really explore what does it mean to be a supervisor? Do you want to switch? Okay.
Oh, too far.
You didn't see that. So now's our chance to kind of ask you, we asked you all to kind of answer these 3 questions and think about how you would answer them. So what are the qualities of a good supervisor? You can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. I know we have really good responsive persons, so I'm hoping that at least one of you will provide your thoughts on what skills, right? There we go.
There we go. All right. Active listening, acknowledge input from the team, flexibility, they're all coming in now. Flexibility, transparency, understanding different situations, good communicator, humble, interested in your work, available, caring, knowledge, open-minded, someone who listens and supports you while also giving opportunity for growth and professional development. They're available, ready to roll up their sleeves and help instead of merely staying in their ivory tower. My goal as a leader is to be an active listener that provides autonomy, pushing past comfort level, like presenting, respects your judgment and abilities, fairness in decision-making, problem solver, helping when needed.
So I took all the responses that I got in these meetings, and it was about, I think I met with like 17 or 18 staff members. And of course, like the last meeting was like March 2nd of 2020. So I never got to really finish this project, which was going to be kind of presenting to the staff about where we landed and kind of developing almost a development professional development around kind of what we found. But Katie, if you want to show the word cloud, this is all of the responses we got. And I'm sure you'll see a lot of what you put are in this word cloud, right? And what's interesting is both when we did this kind of activity and also when we presented in Portland, if you ask, and I'm sure, I'm going to ask you all, and you can kind of just think about it. I don't know if there's a way to get feedback, but do you think you always do all these things? And to be honest, usually it's no, right? We all know how to be an excellent supervisor, but are we always all these things? Not all the time, because it's hard. It's hard to constantly kind of do all of these things and still meet the deadlines and still make your supervisors happy, right? You're meeting their expectations. You're making sure that you're meeting the needs of your clients, your customers, your students, your families. So I think that's where the crux of this is, right? We all know the skill set that we want in a supervisor. And we may have all had a really, really awesome supervisor in our past, but I know we've all also had not so great supervisors in the past, right? I think when I had asked those questions, not a micromanager was said by probably every single person. And yet we know there are still micromanagers, right? And so it's not always easy for everyone to automatically do these things. They're inherent to all people, but they're skills. And so I think it's important to be able to know these things and work towards them as you kind of relate back to the scenarios and as you relate back to the current environment that you're in. What are your challenges right now in your world? And so, Katie, I don't know.
Do you want to go back to the other questions?
No, I was just going to say we can go to the discussion.
Okay. So how many of you right now, you can probably throw it in the chat, or there's that Q&A feature too that I keep forgetting about. But how many of you are supervisors right now?
Or you can maybe raise your hand. I don't know. Can multiple people? Yes,
Oh, definitely. It's like there's about 16 people, 17. The number keeps going up a little bit.
Okay.
Hands. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, and a bunch of people thrown in the chat too. It looks like that they're supervisors. And how many are not currently supervisors?
Okay.
Looks like at least a few out there. So those of you who aren't supervisors, what do you think you would emulate from your current supervisors, or even those who are, right? Because we talked about, we've all had those great supervisors. We've all had those not so great ones that we'd probably prefer to forget about. But what of those people would you emulate? What would you do differently? Are they more management qualities that you think you need, leadership qualities that you need to work on? What do you guys think?
So I'll give an example. I had a supervisor who, when I would send an email, that I put a lot of thought into, and I asked like 4 questions, and I've kind of tried to make it the most efficient so that she can, I've thought through a whole issue, and I'm like, okay, here's the 4 things I need to know to move to the next step. I would get like a 3-word response. And I'm telling this story because I've talked to her about it in the past. And I explained to her, I know you're busy and I know you're trying to just answer and move on, but it tells me that you aren't as invested in helping me as the time or the respectful of the time I took to ask this. Because now I have to follow back up because you only answered one of my 4 questions, and so now I have to say, okay, but thank you, but what about this and this and this? And so that is something I try and be very aware of, is how I communicate, particularly in writing, double backing. Did I answer all your questions? And, and I know it's a response, to how I've been managed in the past.
So we've gotten a few things in the chat too. So professional development for all builds a greater team as a whole. And I think that professional development has gotten harder with the pandemic, right? Like the in-person, human resources classes or courses, even through your own institution, aren't as readily available when we were all remote. Conferences like ACRO went virtual, or a lot of pre-recorded sessions. So getting that one-on-one interaction was harder, right? And getting that immediate responsiveness. So we tried to be creative, right? I know that one of the things that I tried to do previously with some staff members were say, okay, so here's some things we need to work on. Let's go out, and I'd find some TED Talks that were, yes, pre-recorded, but out there on the issues, have them watch it. I also committed to watching them myself, and then we'd have conversations about it. And then put them in opportunities where they could utilize some of those skills that were discussed in that TED Talk presentation. So it's really trying to get creative with that professional development. So, I scrolled too far. Somebody else was saying, let's see, that they're better at management and would like to be more of a leader, like a recent supervisor. Right? That recent supervisor was mindful in the moment and followed through on things. It's important to always show your team that you can also do the work, right? I think that is really important, right? It's not that we're just here to tell people what to do. It's we're here to understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it that way, especially before you implement any big changes. And if you can't step in, how do you expect your team to buy into your vision? Right. It's a lot of what we talked about in being a good leader.
Yeah, I appreciated. There was a comment we missed because it was like during a transition in our conversation.
Yeah.
It was talking about it's really hard to be a visionary when you're, working the nights and the weekends trying to meet the deadline. And that's so true. Yeah. It's so true. I'm in a new position and I am up to my eyeballs just trying to learn the culture here, learn how things work. They're very different from where I came from, but also trying to be the leader that they hired me to be. So it's a challenge. It's not easy.
Yeah, I made the comment earlier today, even that today's 1 year since I've been at GW. Said I feel like I have learned so much, but there's so much I don't know. Right. We're still all constantly learning. And I think that it takes that good manager and good leader to understand that, right? That we don't all always have all the answers and know everything. I think being a leader is hard if upper management undervalues your team. Mm-hmm. I want to lead my team more, but fear I would put my own job in jeopardy if I advocate too much.
That's tough.
That's a really hard position to be in.
Yeah.
And then somebody, kind of replied to that comment and said, advocate to the grave. You're let go for advocating for your team and vision of the institution. Do you really want to be there?
Mm-hmm. It's tough. Yeah.
Hard position to be in. Take into consideration the knowledge your team brings to the table. Right? Everybody's got something unique that they bring to your team. Listen to each point of view. Make them feel part of the decision, give them opportunity to share ideas and possible solutions.
Right, that's so important. I often will say, and a lot of times to my family, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution, right? Like, what's your mentality? Because if you're stuck on the problem, you're not helping solve it. So I think that's so true. And they're just more involved and invested when they feel like they had a part in fixing a problem.
And I can attest she does say that to her family. I'm pretty sure I've heard her say that to her family. Then understanding there may be times that life outside of work has been chaotic, right? We all have had things going on outside of work at some point in time that makes it chaotic. Mm-hmm. And so it may be a good day for that person to work on something that is more mechanical versus deeply thought-provoking, right? Something that is almost that routine. I know that I have this list. I just click these buttons and that's all I'm going to do today because I can still be productive, but that's all I can handle. And being okay with that. But I think a lot of that comes down to good communication, right? Like if you can communicate with your supervisor, hey, this is just what I need to do today. I'm still here. I'm still going to be productive. I just need to work on this because life is happening. Oh, goodness.
I'll never be afraid to ask questions and advocate and have the hard conversations, both with your team as well as upper administration. Your team will respect you for that. I completely agree. I think honesty and just, not dancing around, if you have to have some tough conversations or, share some, unhappy news, I think it is important. But you're right. It's both ways. It's with upper administration and with your own team.
Definitely a challenge because our terms have a time frame. And if you don't get something done, there's no time to make it up. You must keep going.
Yeah.
Right. Understand personality differences between your team members, how to navigate those. Everyone has strengths, weaknesses, and understanding how those can come together to be a good thing.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And that's actually a point we didn't make, but it did come up, I think, in our presentation is you don't, as a manager, as a supervisor, you don't always have to manage everyone the same way. In fact, I think sometimes you have to be dynamic and responsive to perhaps the needs of your employee. Some employees really need external motivation, and others are more intrinsically motivated. They don't like you showing up every day and saying, rah, rah, you did a good job is not what they want or need or care about. They just want, let me just focus on my work and get it done. And it's recognizing that neither one of those are bad, right? But sometimes you have to shape the way you do it. So I have an example. I had a staff member. I would come in every morning and just be bubbly and sing song, hey, so-and-so, hey, how are you? And so, and she was very quiet. And I would always walk by and just say her name and, hey, Stacy, how are you? And she finally came in one day. She's like, I really don't like it when you do that. I was like, what? Why? And she's like, it just feels, it's not genuine. It just doesn't feel like, and I realized after the fact that a lot of times she's here all the time and I was trying to bring her up to where I was, right? Like, and she didn't want to be there, right? She's here. I'm just doing my thing. I don't, and I was like, that's fine. And so every day I walked in and, hey, Stacy, hey, that's all she wanted. And it's something so small, but I am sure we all have those things that probably just drove her nuts.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, like, I am happy to make that change. I think that's another thing too, is I always tell people, you're not going to hurt my feelings. You can tell me whatever you want. You're not going to hurt my feelings, because I want that openness. I want them to feel comfortable telling me how do you really feel? Because if you're not having that kind of open conversation, it's really hard to help. When you go back to the Great Resignation, it's really hard to make sure that staff are happy, and so yeah.
I do see that one person is raising their hand. Juan, I'm not sure. I'm sorry to call you out. I'm not sure if you're looking to add to the conversation or if you just forgot to put a hand down, but I did want to mention that.
I can't see. I might have.
Oh, there it is. If I open Juan.
Participants, it should pop in. But Juan, if it was just a mistake, no worries at all. I did just want to bring it to.
Well, thank you for bringing it up.
Of course.
Juan, do you have anything to say? Can he speak?
You should be able to. Juan, if you are looking to speak, you can make sure that you're not muted, or you can start your video. But if not, no worries at all.
Okay, may have been left up from earlier.
Yeah. But we did get a question.
Oh.
It's, how do you tell someone they need to work on a skill like communication? I'm friends with someone who has a conflict with their supervisor.
So it's hard. It's always hard when you have to tell someone they need to be better at something. I always try and do it in a way that's, I'm telling you this because I think that it's probably affecting other people in addition to me. But please, if you don't want to take this advice, I get it, and then I would just say, like, sometimes when you email, it comes across as really short because you don't, you maybe just use 3 words. So to use my example, or I feel like sometimes you forget to tell us things that you learn in meetings and then we find out from other people. And the reason that's hard for us is because we are expected to know the answer to something and we are caught off guard. So my strategy in that is to present the what and then the why.
Right. That's what I was thinking too, right? It's not just about this is what you're doing wrong, or this is what we don't, or what I don't like about your approach in something. It's the why, right? Because that's what's going to help that person to understand how it's impacting you and potentially others.
Well, in our whole office, right? It makes us all look better. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I think we're coming close to time. Was this an hour, I think? I don't want to.
Yeah, we are approaching time. We have about 4 minutes left and we can leave time to continue the conversation, but it's really up to you guys.
This is wonderful. On that last screen, I think what we had pointed out, and it's really part of their beginning, but it's, just remembering healthy organizations really need both. You need effective managers and strong leaders, and they might not be the same people, so when you're building a team, you have to consider strengths and what, what those people bring to your team.
Yeah. So someone was asking if this recording will be available.
Yes, so to answer both questions about the PowerPoint as well as the recording, both will be available probably within 48 hours after we end the call today. It'll be on that same registration page that you guys used to sign up initially.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can also see our current contact information here on this last slide. If you want to continue the conversation, have any questions, or would just like to connect professionally. I know that it's always great to have, colleagues at other institutions to bounce ideas off of as well.
Absolutely. I think we're both on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out.
Well, again, on behalf of ACRO, thank you both so much for taking the time to not only present an annual, but also to continue this conversation and bring it virtually as well. Again, that PowerPoint and the recording will be available pretty shortly. And we do encourage you guys to connect with one another because that's where the power and the solutions come in, is in conversation. So thank you everybody for your time. And if there's any last words, we'll go ahead and close out for the day. Give you guys some time back.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Rest of your afternoon. Bye, guys.